What's up, Miniatures Paintbrush Legion?
And welcome to Terrain Tutorials.
Welcome back, TMP fans, and must I say, you have a wonderful smile. I am Rob, your host, and I'm here joined by Sara.
Thanks for having me on the show, Rob.
Absolute pleasure, too. Today we're going to paint up an Achomite stack. Let's go down to Tabletown, see how I got on with it. All right, so we're going to start off with this Sector Munitorum project. This is all that I've been doing. If you're wondering why I'm doing so many terrain tutorials, it's because I've been doing all of this. Sara, what do you think of this?
Well, I think it's important to have your terrain for when you're playing your war games.
You actually convinced me to put this terrain piece in the living room. For some reason, I just was kind of shy about my artwork and I didn't want to display it in my living room, but you said go for it. You know, life is too short. So I actually put it in there because of you. And I really appreciate that. Anyway, back to Tabletown. We're using an airbrush for this, and we're using Mephisto red, and that's a good base red. What happened here is I'm doing little spurts or little blasts of air just to bring it up slowly, because this is a very dark color. Actually, when it goes on a lot brighter, and then it darkens out to a really dark red, which is a great base coat for these panels, simply because I'm going to highlight the middle, so I'm going to do some panel highlighting with it. So here it is all red, and I'm going to put in some game ink in there just to have a lot more pigment towards the center. I'm going to actually add to that later on with some Wild Rider red in Evil Sun Scarlet as well. So we're adding that to it, and really you see how rich the pigment is when I paint on the ink to each panel line. Going from the center of it instead of the sides, this way it looks darker on the edges and brighter in the middle, where the sun would catch it a little more, or even any kind of diffuse light would catch it a little more, so it'd be a little brighter. All right, Evil Sun Scarlet is next. We're going to put that on top. Again, layering system, but we're using a layering system which is usually associated with brush techniques, but we're using the airbrush, and we're going to have that really buttery, smooth kind of transition from the dark to the brighter red in the middle. And that effects is called panel modulation, and that's what we're doing here. So have you ever used an airbrush before, Sara?
I have not.
Well, we're going to have to remedy that. I think that's definitely going to be a class for us to do that. Airbrushes are really neat because the transitions are really smooth. The only thing with airbrushes are they clog up frequently, so you always have to keep them clean. I use some airbrush flow improver that really helps. All right, so we're going to do the middle with steel. Now, I made a big mistake here. Actually, Sara, I put down the PSI and I turned off my air compressor, and I was using the air that was just generated that was left in the air compressor. I forgot that I turned off my air compressor. So what happened was, when I was doing the middle panels here, it started spraying and spurting. You can see that over to the left-hand corner, and I have like a lot of overspray, and that's because I did not have the PSI up. So make sure that your PSI is at least 15 pressure, and you want to hold it really close by using little sweeping motions, so this way you don't drip in one area. And that's how you control the airbrush. Go close, don't be afraid to go close, to get a less narrower of spray, and you can control exactly where you want to put the airbrush or your color into. Now, I'm not really too worried about the overspray because I'm going to paint the lining of the steel around it with a brush. So we're going to start off there. And as you can see, that Vallejo model color, metal colors, game changer when it comes to doing metallic paints, because they go on so richly and smoothly. Okay, down for a darker steel right now, just to add contrast. You're going to want to have contrast with all your miniatures because you want to punch up the value of it. And then people kind of like stare at it when you go from like a black all the way up to a white, and the gradients in between. It makes it look stunning and it stands out a little more. So here I am painting the steel around it, so making sure that all the steel kind of like matches throughout at the dark to the light. I'm going to use some green here. I'm using this Panzer green over here that I picked up, a German type of green, a camo. And what I'm going to do is I'm using it on here, but not only on here, is I was actually painting another miniature while I was painting this. Because have you ever had that paint on your paint palette where you're like, yeah, what am I going to do with this extra paint? Well, guess what? I just threw in another miniature and started painting that on the side just to use it because, it was for D&D and it was for a campaign and I wanted to improve the skill of doing red irritated eyes, and there was a miniature. If you ever want to practice a technique and you don't want to spend a lot of money doing it on your Games Workshop miniatures, go to Reaper Miniatures and go in one of those Kickstarters where they give you hundreds of miniatures and you just practice the technique so you can learn it. And then when you go back to your expensive models, you know the technique and you can actually, really employ what you've learned, the muscle memory that you've learned by doing that technique. That's why at the end of every video I say, learn at least one technique, like push yourself in one area to improve a skill. So this way you're better than you were yesterday. And that's how you measure improvements, not by looking at other people's work, but just measuring how you've done today and then looking at the stuff you do like 3 months from now and see if there's any kind of improvement. If there isn't any, then you need to work on at least one skill to improve that thing and get better. And throughout the time, you'll be a master painter. This is the Reaper miniature painter that I was painting. It looks hideous right now, but you can see that I was using camouflage green in order to do that. And you're going to see I use a lot of greens in here because I did want it, the miniature to be mostly tones of green. And since I had all that extra paint, I might as well use it for dual purpose.
Well, the red and green contrast very nicely, so that draws the eye of the viewer.
It really does. It reminds me of a rose. Like if you see the patterns that occur in nature and you try to like model those things within your painting, everything seems a little more natural. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So here I am just painting pipes up here. Now this stack itself is supposed to go for the thermothrope reactor. I can't believe I said that and remembered it. But I forgot to put it on. So I'm going to use it. So I kit bashed it and put it in this piece there. Have you ever gone back and you're working on a project, Sarah? And then, you go back and you're like, oops. And then you're like, it's all right. I'll just, hack it into something else.
Yeah, that's definitely happened to me before.
All right. Doing some Vallejo game color verde. And there it is, getting a little contrast in here, going up in the variance of green. It's really cool that this is green. And like none of the other ones are green wires and stuff like that. They have some green, but not as much to the extent of this one. I kind of want to make this piece a little bit unique by adding some special things to it.
Well, and I think it also helps with creating a sense of depth and texture. So it's not just all gray at the bottom. The green really helps to give it shape.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, I think I chose the colors that really pop. Like I went from a darker to a lighter into a lighter, doing variants and gradients and adding those textures to it. So this way it adds interest to the model. Don't worry about that speckle over there on the model panelations right there. The speckle where I didn't put enough PSI. And that's what happens when you don't put enough PSI. So if you ever want to go for a starry night, just shut the air compressor off and use the air in there and it'll start spurting like that. I'm going to cover that up with weathering later on and I'm going to show you how I do that. Time for a livery green, which is a really like bright green, which is kind of difficult to paint with. You're going to see a lot of over brush stroking here, but that's okay. I tidy it up later with washes and it looks fabulous. They call washes liquid talent, because it kind of covers up your mistakes and unifies a piece. Yeah. I usually use shades in a non-conventional way, but this time I used it in a conventional way where I just applied it all over the areas I wanted to cover. Sometimes you use pin washing where you just locate the exact source where you want to actually create shadows a little darker. And sometimes, which I do, I throw it through an airbrush and get like a nice shadow color. it's just so smooth of a gradient that I love using it. I absolutely do. Whenever you want to add some kind of shadow or some kind of gradient or an ultra smooth blend, go for your shades. You heard it from me, folks. You heard it from me. Now time for some Prussian blue from Vallejo Model Color. Dark Prussian blue to be exact. And we're going to go in there because red is such a warm color. So having the greens and having the blues, those are cold colors, which add the maximum amount of contrast. So there. So usually when I paint something, I'm always looking at a color wheel and going opposite side of the spectrum to create some interest and to create some variation through my pieces, because I really do want it to pop and stand out, especially because I'm going to have an entire table worth of these things. I mean, you saw how many pieces that I have so far. And here it is, folks. The next terrain tutorial that I do, the next video that I do about terrain is going to include the last piece of terrain for the entire project. There's that dark Prussian glue again. And I'm going to get pieces on the center console here and really getting into there. Now, you know, a lot of people won't paint the insides of these like this simply because I'm going to cover it with another stack. Sometimes I paint the inside of a tank and then seal it up so nobody can see it. What do you think about that? Some people think that's silly. Bronze is up next, just to add some detail in there. I use Vallejo Model Color brown. So what do you think about painting the inside of a tank that I'm going to cover up?
I mean, to be honest, I probably wouldn't do that. But if it brings you joy, then you should continue because you know that it's painted.
I do know that it's painted, but here's the thing. If I want to get better at painting cockpits and doing the interiors of something like that, I just need practice. So that's my practice. So even if I mess up, it doesn't matter. At least I get the practice of doing that. Non-oil is next. That is a shade. And I'm just going to go brush all over the place. This is how traditionally you use shades. Well, maybe not brush, more like tappa. The official tappa technique of 2023. Thank you, Rob. For coming up with the tappa. Sometimes you just need to tap that. Anyway, shade is next, and this is how I traditionally use it. You just like throw it all over the place and let it do its thing, and just make sure it doesn't pool in really dark areas. And there it is. It kind of unifies everything. Look at that. Isn't that nice? Awesome. Yeah, right? Liquid talent. Time for Proclo White. It's my favorite white thus far, even though I do hate white. I put something in the center over here. I was going for the white background with the red signals, but kind of didn't work out for me. So, I mean, if you want to paint it white and try go for that, you can. But I didn't like the way it turned out. All right. So now time for some weathering. And what I'm going to do here, I double the speed of this because I took my time in here. I'm putting streaking grime in here, and I'm just coming down. AK Interactive makes great products when it comes to weathering, and I'm doing some weathering to cover up my mistakes, but also going to do some pin washing because if all this grime is coming down, it's going to hit some of the recesses in there, so I go into the recesses as well. But as it dries, it dulls down all that overspray sparkling silver paint that we have over there. I'm going to do it around the edges wherever I oversprayed, that's where it's going to go. It's going to look dirty, and it's actually going to look like it has a little more interest in it because more things are going on.
Yeah, I think it actually looks kind of like the metal has been scraped. And so maybe some steel is showing through on the bottom, and you have some rust.
There it is. So
it definitely adds a lot of texture and a lot of interest.
Thank you.
Now, whenever I see a rusty dumpster, I think of you, Rob.
Thanks. I should dive in one. Okay, so here I am ruining everything by throwing white paint right in the middle. Look at that. What is going on here, you may be thinking. And I'm telling you right now, I am taking nail art that had graffiti, And it's a pretty transparent kind of decal. And I'm cutting it really close. So if I put it on there with it being transparent, it wouldn't show up the way it does like this. See, now it pops and it looks a little dirty and it looks like, and I'm going to put some weathering on that too. And here's on the back. I'm doing some more as well. And this is how I slip it on. That's exactly how it goes. Right onto the piece. Excuse me. Perfect. And I took a poster of people shooting, of Sector Munitorum shooting, actually. And I put it on there and I weathered it as well. I tried something new. I used a different glue. I used a spray adhesive instead of using regular glue. Well, there you have it, folks. The Achomite stack painted up and part of that terrain project that I'm going to do. The entire table worth of terrain here. Sarah's going to be joining us for a lot of different shows, and she comes from a background of D&D as well as wargaming. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I've started exploring wargaming with Malifaux and with Warhammer Underworlds.
That's great. That's great. I'm excited to get playing, aren't you?
Definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, remember to paint every miniature to improve at least one skill. May your backlog get ever smaller.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.